I know. It is the last 3 weeks, eh? All right, so welcome back. We are Comp 397. That's White Game Programming in the winter 2022 semester at Centennial, and it's week 12 of our broadcasting time together. And last week, what did we do? We covered a bit of multiplayer networking. We talked about in the lecture, we talked about different kinds of ways of doing multiplayer networking with different systems. And we kind of went through different kinds of topologies and a bunch of other stuff. And we landed on MLAPI, which is now called netcode. That's what we're using, Unity netcode, that we kind of used to make a very simple example of some, kind of interaction. That's what happened last week on when we got together. Okay. So what are we doing this week then? Well, what I want to do this week is continue with multiplayer networking this week. And what we're going to do is we're going to enable our player prefab to work with Unity netcode. So the older player prefab we had before, I want to bring it into into our project and work together to make it work. And we'll talk about some things we can do to make it better and so on. Okay. So that's what I want to do. And for lab 12, it's going to be very similar to lab 11 in that you're going to still play and test with at least 3 instances of your of Unity. What you want to try and do is I want to have 3 players that look through their own cameras as an example in first person perspective. So that's very similar by using the same kind of structure that we had before when we had our our tiles and everything else. We can make even a random tile map. All those things are possible, and that's the stuff that we're doing. But next week what we're going to do is something different. I have to talk about that as well. Is we have to do a little bit of testing. I got to talk about some optimizations for mobile, as well as some testing and all that kind of stuff. So the stuff that we're going to do this week, which was, if we look forward, we're supposed to do profiler and all that kind of stuff. We're going to bring the profiler out till week 13. And again, I'll have this updated for the next crew that comes in. But for the most part, Unity's profiler we won't do this week. We'll do it next week. And then what we're going to do this week is more multiplayer networking. Okay, that's what's happening. So what's due week 12, lab 12 is due Saturday. Assignment 2 part 3 is due next week, week 13. And then your final presentation is due week 14, and then we're done. Okay, so that's kind of it is. We really don't have a lot of time. It's this week, next week, and the week after, and then it's over for the winter semester. So that's what's happening right now. So on to this. So what we really want to focus on this week is, can we make it so that way, do we have class Easter Monday? We will not have class Easter Monday. Easter Monday, very good. Yeah, that's impossible. So if we look at that, that means that's why we're doing that thing that I talked about, which was, if we think about it, Easter hits us next week, right? So next week is Good Friday is the 15th, if I'm not wrong. And then the 16th, is Easter Saturday. Easter Sunday is on the 17th typically. And then Easter Monday is on the 18th. And if I'm not wrong, and we can look at important dates for Centennial, let's look at that. Centennial College, important dates. This is the way we look at it, important dates. And the reason why we want to look here is because it's our definitive thing to tell us when we have stuff, right? So, yeah, I would say that April 15th we're closed, but that means Easter Monday we would be here physically. Easter Monday would be here, Joram. We wouldn't. So that's the definitive answer on that one. So the 15th we're closed. So that means again, going back to our dates, we're sitting at the 4th. So next Friday we're closed. We're not going to get together, right? And then the Friday after that, that's for people who celebrate Eastern or the Eastern Orthodox religions and all that stuff. They have their Easter on the following Friday, right? So that's how it goes. So to me, we'll probably have an Easter Monday. We'll probably get together on the 18th and then do our thing. Now, if you can't make it, don't worry, I'll still record. But yeah, but Friday is the one we're closed. So that's not this Friday, but next Friday. Does that make sense? Okay. Again, always look at this link here for the winter 2022 semester. And if you're doing anything in the summer, there's going to be you can look at the summer semester 2022 for all those dates as well. For example, things like days that were closed. May 23rd, we'd be closed because of Victoria Day if you're doing that summer semester, and so on, as well as Canada Days, July 1st. Those things are happening. August 1st. Those days are the days that we're going to have basically off throughout the winter, the summer, I mean. So if we look at May 23rd, for those people who are interested, if you just look forward just a month, it's not very far away. That's a Monday. So that's like the fourth Monday in May 23rd. That's what's happening this in the summer semester. And then July 1st hits us on the Friday. That's good. That's a long weekend. In July, which is awesome. And then the civic holiday on August 1st in the summertime, which is pretty awesome, is a Monday. So we're going to get long weekends a couple of times in the summer. All right, back to this. So now that we've explored all the holidays to see if we get some time off, back to this stuff. So this is the scope of what we want to do. I want to take our player, and again, this is interactive, so I want you guys to help out and everything else. So to get there, what I want to go is if I can get you guys to start off with a project that we had from last week. So I kind of made, let's just bring that into play here for a second. If we go to desktop, and if I look at Comp 397 for section 2, I've made a week 12 by making a copy of week 11. So please do that now. And what that gives me is what we'd had before. So here's our kind of the stuff we had last week. The only thing I've modified here, I just got to talk about it. I modified a couple of things, and I wanted to talk about this. So let's get into our scenes for netcode. Here's our netcode scene. And our netcode scene is this one right here. And what I've done is, just to make it so that's more playable, make it easier, is I've modified the size of my ground right now. It's the first modification I've made. So it's 10, 10. All right, so it's 10 by 10 instead of 100 by 100 to make it a little bit smaller. Okay, and then inside of the stuff we've done for our networked player. So if we go back to our network player for a second, here's our scripts. And if we go back to our network player behavior, let's open that up together, right? Then the only thing I modified so far, just to get us started as a starter, okay, is I modified the random position. Instead of it being minus 10 and 10, I just made it minus 3 and 3. So that way we're in a smaller space, because otherwise it was just too big to play with right now. And I want to make it so that way we can play around and see it really quickly. And it's a smaller space. And we got to talk about some issues that we encountered last week and those kind of things. Okay, so we're going to rework some of this too, because we want to kind of build out our networked player so it's a little better. We talked about fundamentals last week, and this week we're going to do a little bit more stuff. So if I run my game right now, right, just from last week, you're going to get a smaller window, right? And I click on host, and you can see that I get my little guy, and he's going to run around, right? That's all that's happening there. All right, so you guys should be able to get this to this point too. Okay, so what I want to do is I don't want this anymore. We have our camera that is kind of a freestanding camera that's right here. I want to build out our kind of a prefab similar to what we did with our player, but I want to do it step by step and from scratch. And we got to talk about some of the regular player stuff first. So let's discuss this first. It's all our preamble. This is what we're going to do. We're going to start talking about it first and see what things do we need to do to bring our player that we had before to the same level we have with our network player now, right? And what do we need to add if we need to add anything first, right? So if I look at my player, my regular player, we had a character controller, okay? So again, it was what it was. It wasn't the best, but it was a character controller. We brought it in, and the character controller had a rigid body and the ability for us to control the player. Now, it doesn't mean anything when it comes to how this works on the game world, because really what we really needed was our player behavior had a max speed and a gravity and a jump and everything else. And this is the stuff that we can probably incorporate right away, right? So all those things. We also had some on-screen control support and all those kind of things. And we can probably steal some of the same components as we bring in our player. So a couple of ways I want to think about this with you guys today. Where do you think, and Edgar, I see you come off mute. Where do you think we want to start? Do you want to start off of our old player, or do we want to add stuff to our new player? What are your thoughts? And Edgar, did you have a thought, or are you off mute by accident?
Accident. Sorry.
That's okay. No. Stay. So maybe since I got you here, what do you think? Do you think we should have our old player and we take them apart, as an example, or should we build a brand new one and then put them back together? What are you thinking?
Copy the script and just make any change that need for the multiplayer.
I agree. But we also have some character controller and all that stuff. What should we do there? Should we just bring that over, or should we just make a copy of this player prefab? Like, should I bring the player prefab in here? Here's our player prefab, right? Because we already got the player prefab here. It's working, right? It's got its own camera. It's all set up. It's like we did a lot of work, to make this work. Be honest, right? So we have our player prefab. We want to convert our player prefab into a network player, right? And we've already done some work with the network player in order for us to do that, right? So would it be as simple as replacing our network player with our player? Remember that in our game manager, we have a network manager, and in our network manager, we use network player instead of player, right? Could it be as simple as just get rid of this? Just saying, get rid of this. And then inside of our player, right, our player prefab, we won't save the prefab yet. Could it be as simple as doing a couple things? Adding a network object. So we have to make this as a network object. That's something we need to do, right? So we're saying this version of the player prefab, and what we'll do just to save ourselves, so we don't have an issue, is I will right click here, and I'm going to go to prefab and unpack completely. So that way there's no risk to the player by accident. I can make my own new play. I can call it a new prefab or whatever, right? For now. But this is my player right now, and it has a main camera, and it has a ground check, and it has a player marker, and it has all these wonderful things that we put onto it. Plus, it has its own player behavior script. And now we added a network object, which we can move up. Let's move that up. And the other thing that we need to do, let's add another component. We need a network transform, because there's our network transform component. We need that, and pull that up, move that up. And that's pretty cool. We have a network transform. We have a network object. Question for you is, should we put a network transform on the main camera? We need that, right? So, I mean, we can certainly put that in there, right? Because the main camera has also a camera controller, right? We need to be able to play with the camera controller, and we only want control of the camera, right? Our camera, but not everyone's camera, okay? So right now, if we were to do this, and we're going to call this the multiplayer. We'll call it the multiplayer. The multiplayer. There we go. All right. So instead of the network player, we're going to call this the multiplayer, right? And if the multiplayer, we added a network transform for the camera, we don't need a network object, right? But should we add a network transform from the camera too, right? So let's add that in there. Network transform. Let's see what this begets us. Let's see what this thing bothers us with, right? So here's our network transform, right? Because we need the camera itself is a separate thing that rotates, right? And do we need to care about this is the question. And should we care about the camera controller? Should we make a copy of the camera controller and call it something else, right? I mean, there's a lot of things we can do, but we have a lot of things in here. That's what I'm trying to point out. We have a lot of things in here already that are already ready to go, right? So in our network, in our player behavior itself, we have some values that we have here in our player behavior. We don't want to really lose these things, right? We do have access to our left joystick and on-screen controls and a bunch of other stuff here. And up here at the top, you see we have a reference to the player, and I can always bring back the mini map and the canvas and a bunch of other stuff. But that mini map is also a problem, right? Because the mini map is for us, but not for everybody, right? The canvas is for us, but not for everybody. So how do we bring all those pieces back in? And this is where I want to start super small. So in other words, yes, we could certainly do all these lovely things with the multiplayer, right? And bring all this stuff into it. Yes, I will do that right now, actually. Sorry, so someone's asking for the submissions to be open on for Lab 11, and I'll certainly do that. Let's do that. So Lab 11, let's open it up. Because we had problems. I'll open it up until, today okay? Or should I put it in, do you need more time? Okay. Let's change the due date till today. So if you guys had it done and you couldn't submit, then at least you have everything for tonight. Okay, there we go. All right. And sorry about that. So let's go back. Let's go back to this other issue, okay, that I want to talk about. So I want to just discuss it with you. We have a lot to do. That's what I'm trying to tell you. If we bring this new thing in, fine. But the player behavior script is one thing. It requires left joystick on-screen controls. A mini-map, we're not going to be able to give it that right now, right? And so what I recommend, if we're going to use something like a player behavior and modify it, just like our friend Edgar said, maybe what we can do is we'll make a copy of the player behavior and call it something else, right? Or use our network player behavior, which is in our scripts. Here's our network player behavior, right? And our network player behavior has some stuff already. We can modify it, to the point where we figured this out. This is a copy of our project from last week, so there's no risk. If we mess this up, we can always go back, revert back to the last week. It's no problem. But I'm talking about planning, things that we don't need. I don't need a material color anymore. We don't care about that. So that can come out of our script if we're going to go there, right? And we can certainly copy most of the stuff that we have from our player behavior in here as a copy, but leaving the player behavior alone, right? So we have a good version that we can always look at, okay? And I think maybe that's what you were talking about, right, Edgar? Making a copy of what we had, not messing with it. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought that's what you meant. So let's do that. So let's do that, but we'll keep some of the stuff in here as well. So let's bring up our other script as well, which is the player behavior script. Here's our player behavior script. And I want to port almost everything except for the on-screen controls right now. We'll bring those in after. Okay, so I just want to bring over our ground detection, our movements, all this kind of stuff in here up until about here, right? Character controller and such. Okay, so all those things. And let's port that into our network behavior. So network behavior, let's clean it up. We're not going to need a speed or a renderer. So we need to go back in there. And again, I'm working with last week's project, and I'm just modifying the stuff we have, right? So vertical position and horizontal position, we'll keep it for now, right? Material color we don't need, right? We definitely need our local horizontal and local vertical. We don't need this piece because we're not going to do any kind of event handling right now. I don't need to set colors, right? Random position is still a good thing. I probably still need that. This update function is going to change drastically. I put in is local player, but we'll talk about that in a second. And I don't need all this. So it's just, again, pruning. I'm just doing some cuts, right? Because random spawn position and color, we don't need. I'm not going to do the color anymore. And it's good. Speed is something we're going to get. We're going to do this whole client update differently than this, because that's not going to be the way we're going to do it. So we're going to come back to that in a second. And same thing goes with our server RPC for our client color. We don't need that. And we don't need the uncolor change event. So we're just kind of killing the stuff that we had last time, but still keeping some of the things we know that work. Okay, cool. So that's the first part. I've kind of pruned some of that. Save. And we have some issues with speed, but we're going to readjust the client update so that works. So again, going back to player behavior, I want to grab all of this stuff, okay, all of that stuff, and go back to our network behavior. And at the top, before all the private stuff, let's put that back in. So boom, boom. So this is where this comes into play. And just to adjust, because we know we want some numbers here that are going to be very special, let's see if we cannot grab those numbers now from what the player has right now in there. So 10, minus 30, and 3. I think we have those 10, minus 30, and 3 for gravity and jump height, right? So those things aren't going to change. Our ground radius is 0.5. Ground radius still is 0.5. That's going to stay the same, but everything else pretty much is okay. I can keep all of this, is grounded and such. So that's all good. These are some things we have to consider. And oops, let's go to the next part, which is here, right? So that's the next piece. So we've got our player behavior stuff. On-screen joystick, we're not going to include it right now, right, as we build up. Now, here we get into some interesting issues, right? This is platform detection we don't need, but this is the next piece, this piece right here, okay? So I want you to consider what happens on our start for a second, okay? And let's consider this, okay? So we're in a network environment, and I want to get access to my first-person controller, but the problem with doing this, get controller, I want to get access to my controller, is here's something for you, right? Should I have access to your controller? If you and I are playing together, right? Remember, everything that I put in the start is global. That means I affect all of the multiplayer objects that are in the scene. I affect mine and yours and everybody else's, right? So that's why we have that whole messaging that's going on. I send a message to the server like we did last time, and then from the server, it kind of does a loop. It comes back to the client, and depending if I'm client or server, then I can have this stuff. That's why we were working hard to get that, just the color going last week. So this is going to be interesting. Well, there is something we could do, and I'm just going to put it out there for you, where I say something like if, and I can say is local player, right? If I'm not local player, right? If I'm not a local player, then I don't want, this at all. I don't want my controller to be involved whatsoever, right? So this is something where I want my controller, right? And where I can kind of say something like this. I can say that, get component, character controller, as an example. I want to say that enabled is equal to false. We want to disable it if it's not us, right? If I'm not local player, and if I'm somebody else, I don't want them to have access to my controller, right? Because this will be piled onto their things, won't it? Or here's another thing. Maybe what I want is, if I'm not local player, not is local player, or if I am local player, do I want it so that my controller then is only equal to, I get a reference to that only then, like something like this, right? Is that what I want, right? Because I only want to have this available to me, as an example, if I'm a local player, okay? So that's something that I got to look at, right? And then the update function, right? Is client is one thing, and owner, that's fine. I got my client update. But then when I do all that shenanigans with my controller, right? The shenanigans with my controller, do I want, how do I control my controller when I'm not the client? What happens? Because I need to do a lot of detection here in my update, like I didn't do before. So in my player behavior, here's my player behavior. So this is the first hurdle is this part, the controller. Do I have access to it? Do I even have this controller? Do I have to disable it and delete it or something like that? What does that look like? Okay. Next part is the update function. All of this is grounded stuff. I had it all in the update function, but really this can't be in the update function anymore, right? This has to be in its own move function. I get input, right? I move things around. I can jump. I have a velocity that I take care of. All this stuff here, when I move my controller, that has to be something that I communicate with the server about, remember, as inputs, because otherwise this isn't going to work, right? I'm going to have some really weird stuff happen, right? So, so definitely I don't care about the mini map right now, but I do care about all of this. Okay, just putting it out there. I do care about all this, and this will be a move function. So this will be like a move function I want to put into my network behavior. All right, so let's just make, like right now we don't have a move function, we have a client update, but I want to talk about the move function in a bit. Okay, so here, let's go back in here and we'll say void, we'll say private void move. And in my move function, we'll have all that stuff that I just took all this stuff from the player behavior that we had before. There is no left joystick. We're not giving any kind of support right now for anything else other than regular controls. So that can come away, right? So input.get access, these are the inputs that we had before that are very similar to what we want to do here. Okay, so that's where this is going to disappear here. And obviously what we're going to do is we're going to call the move function in here, right? That's what we want. That's what I want to do in here. Okay. However, it's going to mess us up because this is what we had before. I'm just going to comment this out for now, so it doesn't give us any errors while we set this up. Okay, so again, first thing we have to deal with is something that looks like this. I'm not sure how this is going to work for us yet. Okay, it's the first part. And we're basically going to say the only time I want to get a reference to the controller is if I'm local player. Okay, so I need to be a local player in order for us to get this. And what's the difference between is local player and is client and all that kind of stuff, right? That's also other things to consider. And we should really look at our netcode for all that stuff. So if I go to Unity netcode, right? And then I say something like is local player, what is that, right? So if I look up at docs for netcode, right, as an example, then we have a bunch of things here. So this is the documentation for network behavior. Okay, so here's the documentation. I'm going to give this to you. It's important because we're going to use this as a basis for how we're going to learn how to do this stuff together, right? And one thing is it has a bunch of these things we never explored last week. So here's one of them that that we explored, is client. So it says is client gets if we are executing as a client. Okay, nice. So that's what happens is if it's a client, it's true if we are executing as a client. Okay, what about is host? It's true if we are executing as a host. Okay, in other words, server and client. Look, it tells you right there, server and client, right? Okay, what about is local player? Gets if the object is the personal client's player object. Personal client's player object. So we did one thing, we got information, right, as an example, if we're the player, but then it's different than if that object belongs to us, you know, kind of thing. Okay, how about is owned by server? It says gets whether or not the object has an owner. Okay, cool. Is owner gets if the object is owned by the local player or if the object is the local player object. That's is owner. Is server. Okay, here's another one. If we are executing as a server, is spawned. Used to determine if it's safe to access network object and network manager from within the network behavior component, primarily useful when checking network object, network manager properties within the fixed update. Cool. Good to know. And a bunch of other ones. I'm not going to go through each one, but all these things are important to know because that's part of our network behavior, and our network behavior is something that we have, right? Okay, cool. We have that. And we have other things down here too. We have network variable. This is stuff to actually watch as well. Network variable. And notice the network variable base. And it talks about how, what a network variable, it's an abstract superclass, network variable. And it doesn't give us a great deal of information, you know, as an example, but it's starting to look like we can probably get some things. Here's on value change delegate, right? Which is something that you were using last week, Edgar, the on value changed equivalent, right? When we're looking for things, we may have to use stat again this week, okay? So that's something that we may be looking at. And there's also network transports and those kind of things, okay? And many other things up here as well, all right? So things to note is that you can always try and search for whatever you want. Like if I want to look at the network transform, right? What does that do? So here's our prototyping for network transform. It says MLAPI, there's the prototyping and then there's network transport. And network transform is something that we want to kind of look at. Here's the transform, right? for prototyping. And like we said, if we look at the network transform, there's also the network animator. That's something that we can look at for animation. But here's the network nav mesh agent. We can also do that. We may need to do that for our enemy eventually. But here's our network transform. Our network transform gives us some more information about how that would work, most likely. All right, so going back there then, if I'm a local player means that if the object belongs to the local player instance. So then if the object belongs to the local player instance, which is in my case, the player, right? Then and only then do I want to get a reference to my controller, right? Otherwise, I want to leave that controller out. I don't want to have this controller. I want to have access to that controller if I'm not a local player, okay? Interesting. So in the move, I check to see if I'm grounded. Is grounded is something that I want to check out. Now here is my inputs, X and Z. And this is something that we were doing down here in the client update, right? And what we did was we wanted to keep our local horizontal and local vertical as things that we want to capture. Otherwise, what we want to say is that our horizontal position is equal to what those values are. We can still use this update client position server RPC, right? If we have a change in our local horizontal and local vertical inputs, because that's what this is. Up in the top here, when we look at local horizontal and local vertical, really what this is local horizontal input, local vertical input. Let's just rephrase these things. So local horizontal input, local vertical input, that's what we're going to call it from now on. And then what we're really talking about, instead of vertical position and horizontal position, these network variables are not really named that great from the tutorial, right? They should probably be something like the horizontal input and the vertical input. That's what these things should be on the network. We can also say network, instead of local, we can call it remote if you want to, just so that way it's the same, because really it should have the same shape as this, right? But this should be different. So let's rename this one. So right click, refactor, rename. Instead of vertical position, we're going to call this the remote vertical input, because that's all it is. It's not positioning, it's input. Okay. And this one would be the remote, refactor, rename, the remote horizontal input. All right, that's what those two variables are, remote vertical and remote horizontal inputs. We want to capture those inputs because that's important to do. These variables are here to make sure that nothing changed. So if I've changed, then we're not going to keep checking is what's happening here, okay? All right, cool, excellent. And we want to check to see if I'm local player here. And if I'm the client and I'm the owner, if I'm the client and I'm the owner, well, that's okay. But the only time I want to really do moving at all, any of this stuff, is not just if I'm grounded. I don't even want to check this move function out at all. None of this, unless I'm the player. I'm the local player, right? And that's important too, right? So then I want to do this, and I want to be able to do this stuff. If the local horizontal and blah, 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 let's bring this back. But instead of this being local horizontal, this is the local horizontal input. That's what I want. And this would be the X, which is going to be something up here, X and Z, right? So this is X and Z, X, and this is Z, right? And this is the local vertical input. So if those two are changed and it's not equal to whatever it is, and I want to pull this up here, just for now, when I kind of grab this, just refactoring, I want to pull all this up here at the end of my update. And I'm going to put this inside of my, in my move. Right, so the only time I'm a controller moving, like this is something that I got to think about too. I want to do a controller move on the server side, this part. And the only time I'm going to do a controller move is if I'm the player, if that makes sense. Right, so I don't want to do this transform position stuff at all, unless I'm the player. So again, we're refactoring, so bear with me while we do that, where I say that, okay, so once we got our information, blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff, we've got our input, I've got my jump, okay, that's something else we have to capture, the jump input, because that's something we're gonna send over to. And all of this part, velocity y is, all the stuff that's ready, times time, that delta time, and the move function. This stuff may have to move this stuff around, right? Because remember, we're getting input. Here's our input. And we're saying that if my local horizontal input is not equal to X and my local vertical input is not equal to Z, then and only then, so I want my local horizontal input and my local vertical input to compute with the stuff that I had before. This is kind of what we were going with. Sorry, this should be Z. Kind of what we were going with last time, right? And then I want to call my update client position RPC with my X and my Z input. That's what I want to get there. So that's what's happening inside there. Only if and only if there is we're checking to see if anything changed. So really, it's not a network update. We're saying check if local variables have changed, because we're going to make they're going to change if we compare them with the inputs that we're getting, right? And the reason why we're getting this is it says equality input with floating operators not possible due to rounding, and it's recommending fix our floating point issues where we do something like looks like this with some kind of tolerance where we have a tolerance of 0.0 something or another, right? We're not going to do that. We're just going to assume everything is okay. All right, so that's how this is going to be. Right, and again, we're calling client update, and really we're just calling move, right? For now. So really, eventually we're just going to call move, because we don't need to call client update to do this whole thing. We need to do a move, but there may be some other things we need to do in client update. So for now, it's just move. Okay, one thing at a time. So that's okay, but the controller move, the only time we're going to have access to the controller at all, right? Because it says that, hey, controller is if I'm local player, and here it says if I'm client and I'm the owner, right? And the only time we want to do any of this stuff, right, as an example, any of this stuff at all, this controller move isn't going to happen, right? Because the controller move, that we want to do when we do any of this kind of stuff at all is if I'm getting input, okay? So that's something that needs to happen, right? So then what do we do with this? What do you recommend, right? And also we need something for jump, because right now we only have input for moving, but there's no jumping. What do you recommend? Well, first we need another variable, that's for sure. So this is going to have to be the jump one. So some kind of remote jump input, because all the inputs are the things that we're sharing across the network. So we'll say something like remote jump input. That's what we'll call that. So as we're setting things up, there's our jump input. And then some kind of local jump input, because we want to check to see if it's changed. Again, we can also use a changed event for those things, right? But let's say local jump input and remote jump input. And we can check to see if anything of those has changed, because when we go down here now, it's, hey, if local horizontal input is not equal to this and local jump input is not in that, well, then we're going to say, well, same thing if my local jump input is not equal to our jump, right, which is something that we want to capture, right? And we don't have that as a separate input. We have, we need to check this out altogether. So we're going to say if we're pressing the button, right, this is the get button jump, right, the button, as opposed to the axes, right? So I'm getting an input from the button. How do I capture that? Well, input, it says get button, I return a bool, right, if it's being pressed or not. Okay, so that means up here, instead of it being a float, this should be a bool. And that means this should be a bool up here too, right? So we're going to say, hey, guess what? The button has been pressed. So that's something that we need to figure out. So the remote jump input is true, right? That's what we're saying here. Okay, going back to that, then if now this is something that we have to consider too. right? If this is true, if we press jump here and I'm grounded, okay, is grounded, is that an input? Because is grounded is something that we're going to have. We can't control the other players is grounded, right? The only time we can control, we're changing a variable that we want to have for our physics, right? And we want to check to see if the other person is grounded, but that is not an input. That is a condition. That is a state, right? So the only time we want to change any of that stuff or check anything is if I'm the player, right? If I'm the local player. So there's a kind of a confusion between what goes where. So the input button, we definitely have to do something with, but how do we track when this input is pressed? Do I track it here or do I track it in here, right? So if my local jump input, well, that was something that we can't really track because I'm pressing the button and I don't want to press their button. I want to press my button. How do I do that? Because this is basically a Boolean, right? I'm going to get an input, right? And if it's true, I can decouple this, right? So I can kind of pull this out here, right? I can pull that out and put that here. That's something I can do. I can make a float that is called jump, right? And then what I can do is if my, no, sorry, float, bool that is jump, I can say bool that is jump, bool will be true if I press the button. That's what it means. And then what I can say is if I'm jumping, and instead of jump, let's call it something that makes sense, like is jumping local. This is something that's inside of the variable here, is jumping. If is jumping, I just press the button. If is jumping and I'm grounded, then do something. Then change my velocity, right? That's what's happening there. I make a local velocity variable, which is happening, kind of with what I'm doing, velocity.y. As an example, I'm taking that velocity variable and I'm doing something with it. And there's a lot going on here, like I said, guys. So this is a good idea, but so then I can check to see if my local jump input and is jumping is not the same. That is okay. That we can do because we've decoupled the jumping part from the check, which is what is doing, it's going to do something with the jumping. Okay, cool. So this is jumping and then local horizontal posic. And then what we're going to do say is local jump input is equal to is jumping, right? So that way we're going to set that up. And then in our update client position server RPC, right, then we can't just do X and Z. We also have to do X, Y, and Z, and if you really want to be smart about it, right, Y would be a float or whatever, or a Boolean as well. But for now, if we look at our update client position server RPC, we want a float horizontal, float vertical, and maybe a bool, which is jump. Right? We even call it as jumping. It's the same thing, right? We're just kind of separating this up, is jumping. And then what we can say is, well, let's pass in is jumping too, right? So we can push the X, the Z, and is jumping down to where we're going, right? And here's the horizontal, vertical, and is jumping. And we can just simply say that the remote is horizontal, the remote jump input dot value is equal to is jumping. These are all good things. We're getting inputs, right? And the only time we want to do anything with them is if I'm the local player or, that kind of stuff, right? Let's just kill. We just kind of rejigged everything. My concern is what we do with this, because before we would get the transform position, right? And we would modify the transform position based on the remote horizontal input value, right? Whatever that is, we added it on to the transform position, and that's how we would get it. All right, that was the input value, whatever we got, that position. That's how we move things around for our transform position. And now it's going to be different, right? Now it's going to be like, okay, I just got some input, right? And once I've got input X and Z, I make some calculations, and I want to make the controller move. Right, that's what I want to do. So I want to do like this stuff, all the controller moving stuff. I want to do that, you know, kind of over here in the server update. Isn't that right? What do you think? Take a look at what's happening here and take a look what's going on here. Should I do that stuff over here inside of my server update? First things first, all we want to do is just try and do one-to-one, right? We can massage this stuff later on, but we need to transform what we're doing from a local instance to something that can be used on the network, which is very different. Okay. So what do we do here? What do you recommend, guys? So here's our move, transform right and transform forward, multiplied by X and Z. This can't be here anymore. X and Z, we're not moving in here. We're only getting inputs from the client side. So this and this can't be. This stuff, got to move this out of here, right? And the same thing goes with the jumping part, right? The jumping part is okay. We got, if we're going to check all this stuff, if I'm as grounded, how about as grounded? Do we have to check to see if I'm grounded anymore? Okay. I agree. Oh, I totally agree, right? But here's what we're going to do for now, okay? So velocity and gravity and all that stuff, that's something that we want to modify, right? So velocity is happening up here. So there's our vector 3 velocity. So we have a bunch of stuff, right? These are things that we've set up for the player, right? But this is only our local velocity. We're only going to change our velocity when it's us, right? When it's us. So could we not do something like that in the update function, right? So instead of having to pass all these, you know, kind of updates, the things that I want to modify are the things that I want to say that only if I'm only going to do this if it's me, it's grounded, my velocity is y is less than 0, and you know, something like is local player. That's what I want, right? And is local player means that this has to be, like we said, network behavior. That's what gives us this is local player stuff, right? I get input, no problem, right? I can get input as much as I want, right? But is grounded, we're checking to see if it's grounded every time, no problem. But I'm only going to do velocity is if I'm the local player. Well, if that's true, then is jumping and is grounded, and if I'm the local player, right? Is local player, then okay, cool, right? We can do velocity, jumping, and all that stuff, right? And that's okay. And the only time that I want my controller to move or anything like this is, well, if I'm the local player, right? So if is local player, I'm just putting it out there to you guys, right? We can refactor after. We just, like you said, we just want to move, right? The local player, then I want all this to happen. Okay. So what about this stuff, the transform right stuff and all this stuff? That's the controller moving piece that I want, right? Okay, and this is my input, but really what I want to think about here is, should I move this piece? Because this is just moving right, left, and whatever. This has nothing to do with local player falling or whatever. This is just input. This stuff here happens because of my controller. If I have access to my controller and all that stuff, right? And the only time I'm going to have access to my controller is if I have if I'm the local player. If I'm not the local player, it's going to skip all this stuff, and I'm not going to affect them in any way. Okay, so this part, maybe this part, we can kind of transplant and move this away, right, from this part into this piece right here. So something that goes in here, where I want my X and my Z input, right? This is just input that I'm getting now, right? It's just input. I want to get my X and Z input from my remote horizontal input value. That's this. And my remote vertical input value. If we think about it, maybe this will be what we're going to get. Controller move, right? The only time I want to move my controller, right, based on my move is if I'm the local player, right? But, well, I got input. If I got input, then I should move, right? I should move because I got input, right? If I get input. So this part I don't need because I would move it by the transform. So that's the only time that I would move. My server update's going to happen only if I get input. Okay, I don't think this is going to work exactly like this yet, but let's see if we get any kind of take on this altogether. So I'm just going to just clean it up, right? And I'm just going to clean this up, and we'll see. We'll deal with errors as we go. And this is the first part. The awake will keep there because maybe just like Edgar had us last time do, we might have some stuff where we can put inside the awake function. For now, we'll keep it as is, and we'll take a look at these things on the network. We'll build a small thing, and we won't worry about the camera in terms of moving the camera right and left with the mouse yet. We'll do that in another script later on. Okay, so let's get back to our Unity version. There it is. And what I want to do is I want to remove. Yeah, let's go back to that, Dorian. Let's get back to that. So let's do this. Let's get rid of player behavior in my multiplayer thing. Let's get rid of player behavior, remove. And let's add in networked player, the network player, right? Which is the network player behavior, this one. Let's add that back in. So all this is the same. The ground mask has to be ground. We should check this here as ground. We did that already, just to make sure that that's the case. So this is the thing we have to change. So far, so good, right? In terms of the way it works, right? And so again, main camera is good. Ground check is good. We don't need an extra camera. Let's get rid of the extra camera we have in the scene. We don't need that anymore because we're going to look through the player's eyes now when we run the game, okay? And what we need to do is we need to make this a prefab, this multiplayer is what I called it, right? And we're going to take that prefab and we're going to drag and drop this multiplayer in there. So we have a multiplayer, right? And that multiplayer is going to be something that the network manager, this one, is going to have access to. So I'll take the multiplayer, drag it in here, and take the multiplayer and drag it into our player prefab. That's how we're going to pop up. And then we can get rid of it from here for now. Get rid of this, delete. We have the same input right now for our camera, but what we want, we don't care about the camera. We want to just be able to run and get access to everything else. So if I run this now, there's a problem that I'm going to see right now. We get no camera displaying, right? So we'll, almost like when I get a host, I want to turn off my main camera and turn on my player, right? That's the thing that's going to have to happen as well. So I want to almost like switch off the camera if I'm the host. So let's click host, which means now I would normally get it, but I get a bit of an an issue. It says unassigned reference exception. The variable ground check of network player behavior has not been assigned. Huh. Okay. Well, let's stop this and go to our multiplayer. We have some stuff. Here's ground check. We forgot to do this part. So ground check is a transform. We need to put that there. That's all that meant. That's the only problem that we had there. All right, so that's the transform that was inside of our player. Let's run it again and see if that fixes the problem. I don't think it's going to fix the problem. Okay. Again, what I want to start with is host. I want to click host on. And now again, we can see we can move around. We should get motion just like we have before, but this is just our local dude, right? And this doesn't mean anything because even though I can jump around and whatever, who cares? Because this doesn't tell us anything, really, not really. Okay. So let's go out and build it. So we're going to go file, save project, right? And we're going to do a build and run. Actually, we'll do build settings first. Most important. Go to player settings. Let's change some of this. Make sure this is lab 12. And we'll change this to lab 12 as well, just to make it simple. And also, let's make sure that this doesn't look like this. It should be .ca and all lowercase, guys, if you're going to build this at all. We're going to build up to everything that we want. Don't worry. Don't you worry. Sure. Okay, so it's like this. Something that looks like this. It should be your bundle identifier. It should be not like your product name at all, right? Because product name and bundle identifier are two different things. All right, save this, please. And now that we have a new bundle identifier, we're building for Mac and Windows. We're going to build. Oh yeah, one more thing is in the build settings for your resolution, make sure it's windowed. like we've done before, and it's resizable. Let's make the window smaller. So something like 800 by 600, because I found that we had to resize it to be smaller anyway. So might as well make it even more, even better, 640 by 480 or 600 by 600 or something like that, like a little square window that we can use in the world. Okay, so that's how big it's going to be, like tiny, because we want to be able to kind of look at that window and maybe have a couple of them, right? All right, let's do that. So 600 by 600, and then let's just build and run. Build and run. We're going to select the builds folder like we've done in the past, and then we'll have the issues that will come up, all right, which is what we want to do, right? And we'll click select folder, and let's see what happens. And then we'll go back to what your comment was, Doyun, because we're going to see our problems come up now when we do this kind of thing. All right. So we have a couple problems. One, we have a camera that is, we don't have an extra camera, and the camera should be on. And when we actually click on host for the first time, then after we click on the host and the host is activated, then and only then do we turn the camera off, disable the camera, and only then so we can see it goes to the multi for our player. So I click on host, right? And then we're good to go. There's our host, right? And what I want to do is in the host, right? We want to switch to our Unity. There's back to Unity, ignore that. And let's run a client locally through here as well. So let's do this, close this off, and we'll run the same project, and let's see what happens. Let's see how bad it is. So, okay, client. And well, I have no control over the camera because remember the camera doesn't do anything. And looking here, and here I have access to both cameras, what's happening here. That's okay. And when I run forward, right? If I run forward or back, I can't move now when I'm moving around. So moving is not a possibility. Can't move forward, I can't move back because there's just nothing that's going on. Okay. So why is that? Why can't I move forward and back if I've got inputs? It works locally, right? Again, if I switch over to this, and if I was to go to the network manager and I stop the client, cool, right? And then back to this, right? It says that what happened to me? I don't even know what happened to me at all. It's like it's dead or something. Okay. I got Alt F4 that one. So let's try this again. Let's see what happens now. So, okay, so what happens if locally here on my computer, I run as a host, and then what I want to do is on my computer, like on the actual build, which is in here. So under builds, I run it here like this, and I have an extra window that comes up. And I run as a client, but now I can't move here at all or nothing. And if I go to this, it's crashed. It says the variable controller of network behavior has not been assigned, right? And you probably need to assign the controller variable on the network player behavior script in the inspector. Huh. Okay. So it's like that's why I lost control. I crashed. We couldn't see it because I was live, right? We couldn't see it, but this is what's happening. It's like the variable controller is no good, right? It doesn't exist. Huh. Well, that kind of sucks, right? Right. So let's back to the drawing board, right? That's how I always look at it. File, save project. Let's put this up on GitHub because we want to share what we've done together, right? So did I use? I think I must have used GitKraken for this. And let's talk about positives and negatives. Also, let's make sure that this one is also closed. Alt F4. Because it crashed. We didn't know that it was crashing because we couldn't see that it was crashing. Okay. So back to the drawing board, but we got something. We're getting there. It's just we're not where we want it to be. Okay, so what's this one? This is 305. This is 401. No, it's not you. This is section 2. Yay, okay, cool. There it is. So stage all changes. Let's say added project files for lab 12, which is what we did. There we go. And we're going to push this up to GitHub. Okay, so there we go. So now GitHub has all these changes. All right, cool, excellent. So let's go back to the drawing board. Here's our drawing board. I always like to look at it that way, right? And what I want to do here is inside of my stuff, right? I want to go into this. We found that because local player wasn't existing, that this is a problem, right? I need to get control of my local player, right? And I want to get access to this if I'm a local player, but do I? Because if I pass control of my controller, if I pass it to my move, I need to, because I'm gonna do gravity. I'm gonna fall and do all that stuff if I've got my local player. That's what's happening here, right? And then, well, I want to move, and I'm going to move if I'm inside of my server update, which is here. Here's my controller. So I kind of need it in both places, don't I? But I only want to do this part, right? My controller move, as an example, I don't want to move unless it's me. So it's like, maybe I don't want to do this here. I don't want to do this here. I want to get access to my controller all the time, right? But I don't want to enact any changes unless I'm the local player. So let's do that same thing here. I want to say, hey, if I'm a server, but the only time I'm going to get access to any kind of moves, right, to the controller, right, is the only time I'm moving the controller is if I got input anyway, right? But which controller am I moving? Mine? How do I do that, right? So this is where we have to play around with some of these variables. So let's go back, save it as is. I've just removed that thing that from the over here from the thing. So we always have access to the controller. Okay, why is this a problem? And remember, this is a character controller component. It's not like I can pass it as a network variable. Network variable is limited to a few things. It's not like for everything. Okay, so let's go back and then let's file save. And let's run it locally first, so we can see what happens locally. Always run it locally first and see what happens if I'm a host. Can I still move around? Is it broken somehow? So if it's broken right now, before anything else, it's going to break no matter what. Okay. Also, we need some kind of escape or something else to stop the game, because I don't want to keep, having something that's in the game itself that's preventing me from stopping the game. So let's, inside of here somewhere for now, I want to get input, right? So I can escape. And I want this, anyone escapes, everyone escapes. The game is stopped, okay? Because I can't, like it's too crazy for me to do that, right? So let's just do an input.getKeyDown for everybody. Doesn't matter, server or client. Well, it doesn't matter, all right? So we'll say if input.getKeyDown, and we'll get key down the escape key code, or key code dot escape. Then what we want to do is we want to do an application exit. Application dot quit. Not quitting. Application dot quit. Now this won't work in the editor. It's only going to work inside of a window, because the editor would need something else, right? But that's okay. At least the application will quit if we get access to this. So again, if I run it locally and if I press the escape key, it's not going to quit. So again, if I press host and if I press the escape key, it's not going to quit. But when I build it, if I go file, save project, and if I go build and run, And if I press escape again, it's going to quit. That's what I want, right? Because I don't want to be able to go Alt F4 every single time. That's a pain. Okay. Host. Moved around, jump up and down, no problem. Press escape, quits. Awesome. Now we can bring it back, right? By going to the operating system and double clicking. All right, so there it is. Host, right? And I want to go here and press play, and let's press a client. So I want to see what happens with the client here. Client. All right. Well, there are 2 audio listeners. I can't move forward and back. But what happened with our other app? Well, now I move both cameras, but I still can't move forward and back. So that is a problem. Because remember, one controller is killing the other controller. Remember, the controller is controlling movement. I'm trying to move your controller with my inputs, and it's not going to work because the only way it's going to work is if I control my controller, not your controller. Okay. So here, no problem. I can move my camera, but I move both cameras. I don't want that. I only want to move my camera, not your camera. Right. But I can't even move my controller. I can't move forward and back. Forward and back's not working. So the controller is different, right, than what we had before. Okay, back to the drawing board. So going back to the code then, when we think about this, so I've got inputs, as an example. But however, when I'm a host on my own, no problem. I got full control, right? But if I'm trying to move, right? If I do a controller.move, and this is for the local player as an example, I'm getting jump input, no problem. I'm sending it over and storing it, no problem. But what's happening is when I'm in the server side, which is this side right here, well, my friends, that controller is a no-go. Because that controller happens to be the controller that I need to move, as an example, that is part of my local player, right? So what do I do? What do you recommend? So on update, it's like I want to be the local player. Move is just a vector. That's just me calculating the move. This is correct. This works, right? But then what I want to do is I want to almost kind of get my own thing where I want to say something like here, if I'm his local player, only if I'm in local player, then I don't want to do controller move because controller move is going to control me, right? That's the only time I'm going to be get input from my local player. But do I want to do this here, or do I want to do something like this part, just this part, right? Where I want to say get component controller right now in my server side, where I want to say instead of a controller, which is the global thing, I want to do one of these character controller. I want to get the component here if I'm a local player only, and on server update, that's when I'm going to move stuff. Is that when I can do it? Okay, or is it owner that I have to put in here? Because look at what it says here. If I'm is server, and it here is if I'm client and is the owner of that object, right? I get input only if I'm the owner, okay? But I can move anytime I want, right? All right, let's try this out and see if this is any better. So this is where if I'm a local player, I'm server. On the server update, if I'm the local player, then this is what's happening. I can move my character controller. Otherwise, I'm not. Okay. Because move is going to come. Move is happening, right? I'm getting move updates. But I'm not going to move unless I'm the local player. The only time I'm the local player is what's going to happen. Let's try this first. So again, run it locally first to see if it even makes sense. So if it doesn't make sense locally, it's not going to work when we're remotely. So this, can I move forward and back? Still, I'm okay. That's good. Build and run. build and run, my friends, right? And the reason why I'm making these small incremental builds, because it's quick, it's no problem. We can test a bunch of stuff and see what's happening with our network stuff until we get it going. All right, no problem. We'll ignore that. We'll get into this and we'll place this as a host. We can still move around. Nice, nice, nice. And let's try it again, where I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm also going to run locally here. So I'm the host. And here I'm the client. And okay, I've moved into a new position. Here I can move, and still I have no control over jumping or my client at all. Okay. So tell me where that's done, Do-Yoon. Talk to me. Are you talking about it here, the camera, the world camera, or the camera, the local camera? Which part?
So like I made a variable for the camera for like the camera that is attached to the character, the
Let's
player
go back.
character.
Hold on. That's in the, are you talking about in the camera controller?
No, in the player behavior.
I'm curious. So in the player behavior, yeah, here it is. Yeah.
So I made a variable for the camera so that like I can get access to it, but you could also do something like get component in children or whatever. So like I
Yeah.
got access to the camera and then just disable the camera component in the start. Like if it is not
Right.
the local player.
Okay. Oh, I like that. So, hey, can we do that for the controller? I like your thinking though. So hold on a second. So do we need to make it a network variable or not?
Not a network variable, like just the like
Okay.
the thing
We're
in
gonna
the
say-
inspector. Yeah.
In the start, right? We don't have to even do that. And we're just going to get components in children. So we're going to say something like, hey, get components in children. And we want to get the component as children, which is the camera component. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
And I want enabled is equal to false. And that's only going to happen if I'm not the local player.
Right.
I like your thinking. I like your thinking a lot. Didn't we want to do that for this too? Right? Don't we want to disable the controller if I'm not the local player? Right? But
Maybe.
let's do the camera first. I like that. Okay, so if I'm not the local player, then let's try this first. First things first, right? And we'll just run it locally first. Host. I'm good to go. I'm the local player. I'm okay. Good, good. And then we'll do a file, build and run, save, file, save, file, build and run. Now, this is the beautiful thing about this because we have like, nothing's at risk here, right? We got lots of time today to get this done. This is the beautiful thing. We'll figure this out. And once we figure it out, guys, we have a full multiplayer game and then we'll try it on mobile, which would be awesome. All right. So here's the host. So host can move around by itself. And what we're going to do is go back here and play this and we'll do the client. We won't be able to move yet. They're the same problem. Okay, I can't even move my camera anymore, but I move both. Is this what you wanted? This is kind of the same, isn't it? So I'm moving one, I'm moving both cameras with my player.
Yeah, so like that has to be taken care of in the camera controller, but like if you like take a look in the editor view, then like you can see that the client can take control of the movement and the host can like move its own player and stuff.
With the camera?
No, like so like before it looked like either the client or the host weren't like being able to take control of their own character, like even for the movement, like it seemed like that. But if we like disable the camera for non-local players, then we can actually see that like the movement is actually working for each character.
Okay, but shouldn't we do the same thing then for our things? So let's say get component in children. let's do the same thing for our character controller then. Character controller, and we'll say dot enabled is equal to false. If I'm not the local player, why do I care about this? Else, right? That's
I think you might want that enabled if you're like on the server, I guess. But other than that, yeah, we don't really need that.
I mean, so the only time is if I'm not local player, then the controller else, I'm going to enable it, right? If I'm the local player, I want it. If I'm not the local player, I don't have it, right? And let's look at, I'm going to try both. I'm going to try running locally first and then see what happens. Host, no problem, move around, everything is the same, right? Build and run, file save project, build and run. I do that file save project thing just in case my computer crashes, something happens and I can go back to it. Because it's happened so many times before where I built and all of a sudden my Unity crashes. And that's a bad thing. We don't want that to happen. All right, so cool. Let's run this first as well. We'll run this one. And then we'll get back into this one and click on host. Host can now still move around, no problem. Oops. That's the problem when you press escape. That's okay. Okay, host. And then I go here and click client, and I can't move the client. But what about here? Can I move the client around here? Yes, I can. And I can move the client, and it has nothing to do with, well, I can move me as a host, but look at this, the client doesn't move. That's good. So I can totally move around here as a host for the most part, unless I bump into myself, because I can't see myself right now, right? But that is pretty good. So I can move around and I can move my own camera, but I move their camera too. Bird, right? So non-local players, I'm not going to affect their controller anymore because I've disabled it. Okay, does that make sense? So that actually worked the other way. It didn't stop my camera from working because get component in children camera enabled as false. That still moved around their camera, right?
Yeah, that is because like we didn't disable the camera controller. We just disabled the
Okay.
camera so like we see the, yeah.
Let's do that. So we see their camera, but should we disable the camera or the camera controller? Let's do the camera.
Disabling the camera was just to make the game like know which camera to show. I'm not really sure about camera controller.
Let's try it. Let's try camera controller. So we turn off their camera controller, so we can't move their camera, but I can move me, right? Okay, so again, locally first. Host. Problem. Right? And file save, file build and run. And let's see if we can do it with our host playing by themselves without being affected by the client. That's a whole other thing. This is an advancement we've just made here. We make this work. I'll run this locally here as well. And we'll press host. So host can move around, no problem, jump, do whatever, right? Sorry. So I brought this up, good. But when I bring the client in play, can't move, can't do anything with the client. But the host, this is what I want to check out, the host. Am I locked up? So I can't even move. Once I do that, right? So, you know, as an example, right? So let me show you the other way. Now we'll do it the other way around. Okay, so I'll run the host here first. Host, no problem. Then we'll run the client on this and see. Sometimes it's the other way around. What we want is we want debugging on one of them so we can see what's going on. So I'll go client, and now I'll swap to this one and then see, do I have any input? So here on my host, now I got no input whatsoever. I can't move, I can't do anything on my host. When I did that, I disabled the camera controller. Right, so that's not good. I want to disable the camera controller. That's for sure. Because even here, I can't do anything. I can't move, I can't go forward and back, and I can't move my camera controller. Right? Until I disable, once I do that, then I'm good to go. So this part is a no-go. Camera controllers got to stay on, right? Because otherwise, if I disable the camera controller, it disables a lot of other things. I can't rotate, I can't do anything, okay? So that is no good. Killing the camera, like you're suggesting, is okay, right? Because what it does is says, if I'm not the local player, then why should we have two cameras that I'm controlling? I don't want to control two cameras. I want to disable their, because we're making a copy. This is what's really happening. I'm making a copy of your object in my scene, right? That's what I'm doing. And if I kill the character controller locally, if I'm not the local player, right, then I want to be able to move, right? But I only want to move my stuff, not your stuff. Okay. So then what can I do here? So this is if I'm client and I'm the owner. If I'm client and I'm the owner, then I can do this. But I'm also checking to see if I'm local player, right? If I'm a local player here, and also the only time I'm getting anything from my server, because I put is local player. If I'm the local player here, then I can do the move, right? I can move around if I'm the local player. Okay, that's the only time I'm going to move, because otherwise, you know. But if it's not the local player, if I'm not the local player, right? Then, you know, how would this work? So the question is, should I use local player? Because I've been using client and server, and we also used, you know, if is the client, I'm getting input from the client, and I'm the owner, right? From the client and the owner, should then I have access to my, you know, should I put that is local player instead of is local player? Should I make it so that if I'm the client and I'm the owner, that's then I'm okay. Then I can be able to have access to all this stuff. Should I enable it afterwards? That's only if I'm not local player, right? That means if I'm the server or if I'm a client host, right? I don't want, if I'm the host, I don't want to control your stuff, right? That's what that is. That's what this means. So now I got to take care of the other side. How do I take care of the other side? That means if I'm only the client, I'm only the client. So I don't want to take care of, I don't have access to your camera if I'm the client, right? I only have access to my camera. So we could put an else if, right? Else if is the client, if I'm the client, then I want to get control of my camera. I want to have my controller, my get component, blah, blah, blah. So instead of me being else, I want to have access to all this stuff. I want to make sure that all of this is enabled for me. So I want to have this, let's just say, let's put it the other way around. Let's say enabled is equal to true, right? I want to make sure that that's true. I want my character controller to be enabled also as true. And I also want access to my controller here. Controller is equal to all this, all right? So just not that it's going to make any difference, but I want all this the same. I want my character, my camera enabled, you know, whatever. I'm not going to have control over it, but I want to have my stuff enabled if I'm the client, right? And I'll take it one step further, and is owner, right? So if I'm both the client and the owner on start, then I want to do all this. Okay, I'm the owner of the prefab. All right, let's try it locally first. Because remember, it can crap out locally. And if it craps out locally, we don't care about it remote. Host. Errors. file save project, and then build and run. Then we'll deal with the camera controller separate as a separate issue. Because camera controller is a whole other thing that has its own network object, right? And this one here as well, and we'll run this one as a client, as a host this time. Here's my host. And we'll read this one as a client. Okay, so client has no control, but the host has full control. Host can do everything, but the client and also the host, when I look around, I'm looking around, I'm controlling both cameras again. It's not what I want. Because before I was only controlling my camera, not their camera. Now, when I went and did this, now my camera is already enabled again. All right, so that's not good. But I want to be able to move. Forget camera. I just want to be able to move myself, right, with my own stuff. So, okay, how do I do that? So let's just not. So we'll have no camera, but I want to be able to move my own stuff. I want to move. Okay, so again, I'll just build and run. We'll swap. So we'll say that that's the client, because the client host is okay now, right? But the client itself is not. So this will be the client, and this one will be the client host now. So host, client. Client, can I move? I'm getting input, but I'm not doing anything, right? Because of that other issue. But here, if I move around, I move both the cameras. I shouldn't be able to move both cameras, only one, only me, right? So, but I can move and I don't move you. All right, excellent. Back to this. Back to this is local player. So the only time I want to have a move, right, is if I'm the owner. Right, let's change this from is local player to is owner. If I'm the server and I'm the owner, right, that's the only time I want to do this move thing, right? Because move is something that I want to keep track of. Move is a vector3 object that I'm changing. I'm changing the transform, I'm taking the transform and I'm moving things around, right? But I want to be able to move. I want to be able to move for everyone, not just for thing. And the problem is my character controller is stopping me from doing so. So let's try this, and then we'll try removing it altogether and see what happens. Maybe we can move both of them at the same time. So go like this, and so host, am I still good? Yes, I am. Good. And now file, save, and build and run. Again, these little build and runs are good because I can do them lickety split, really quick, right? And we can find out, you know, some of this stuff that's going on. Or run this one as the client again, and then we'll run that one as a server. So this one will be the host. We can move that around like normal. I'll move this one as the client. And oh boy. Oh boy. That's pretty weird. Bit of drift. Okay. But this one still cannot move. So his owner doesn't do what I want it to do. Okay. What about, I don't do this at all, but I just take this off completely like this. How about this? So I don't care about the network variable that is thing. I get access to it. And just like we did before, this is like my transform that we had before so that I can move around as much as anybody else. Okay, let's see if I can do that. So we have issues. There's issues here. It's not a transform, right? So locally, good to go. Always check locally first, then file, build and run. Then we check remote. Host. Right? Client. Host. Nope. No, none of them can move. Well, I do get it sometimes, but it's like I'm stuck sometimes too. It's like I get a beat, a tick, and I can get input, but I'm not getting input all the time. I can do it, but only for a moment. No input. What's the solution here, guys? How can help me out? Because this isn't any good, right? This idea. So this tracking, when we had is client or whatever, this get component move part is definitely client related. Okay, we know that. So this part, the move method that we're getting, this move bit, right, to actually change the moving. Before, when we were just using transforms, the server update worked. Okay, but now we're not using transforms anymore. Okay, so it's almost like I want to be able to do, you know, I want to be able to do stuff with this part. Okay, so it's almost like it's almost like I want to be able to do a couple things. So first, not just, let's get back to this ugliness up here too, by the way, right? This is not going to work. This works because what it does for us is remove the camera or remove the character controller from the other player, right? That's what it does. We could also take it further and destroy that component. And the way to destroy that component would be something like, you know, get components, or I want to find the camera controller and get rid of that, you know, kind of thing. But that really is not what we want to do. So this is just, it kind of gets rid of the character controller. That worked nice. And like I said, I can probably go and I want to kill the game object with the character controller too, right? That's something I can do. I can say something like, okay, destroy the, something like I want to transform dot find the character controller. And then dot game object. So I'm going to destroy the character controller game object too. This is okay. But then in my server, client update doesn't move. The server update, this is all fine. But the server update, this is messed up. This is where, you know, we don't have access to which character controller is this that I have. Is it for all or just for one? And that's why it's having a problem. It doesn't know what to do here because I'm trying to move both. And remember, because my server is only controlled by a move, I'm trying to control mine and I'm pushing it. I'm making the transforms move, but the transforms being held back by the other character controller because the other character controller has access to mine. So I gotta destroy it. I gotta get rid of it, right? Otherwise, I'm gonna have a problem. So let's see if this can work if I completely remove the other object. So if I remove it and kill the game object too, let's see what happens. Let's see how much mayhem I can cause. All right, so run it. Post. Build. Incremental steps, guys. Build and run. Again, we're trying to do a lot, right? The main thing is we're trying to make it so that the move itself is something that we're keeping track of. Okay, host, we'll do a host here like we did before. And again, we should be able to move around, no problem. But as soon as we start with this one and I go client, this is where we'll run into issues, big issues. Client, big issues. So what it says here is, and let's go back to this one. This one, no problem, it ran. What I did was it says object reference not sent to an instance of an object, network player behavior starts, right? It's trying to find the object, and I've destroyed the actual other object out of the gate. Okay, so this clearly works. I'm able to access the character controller and do something to it. This works on not mine, but the other guy. That's with if I'm the local player, I destroy if I'm not the local player, I killed their character controller, right? That's what I'm killing. So is this really the right approach? Going back to what we said before, right? Sure, it works, but if I kill their character controller, they can't move, right? Make sense? Okay. Hold on. Let's go back to the next part. And the only reason why we're doing this piece, this character controller stuff, is because I'm making it so that the character controller is something that I'm seeing in the inspector. I really don't need to do this. I can just go get component, right? So I really don't need the whole controller thing in the first place. Okay. This is a good thing. This is a good, kind of resolution in our mind. A couple things to note also is what we're trying to do here, right? Just to specify the thing. So I've got my network manager. My network manager instantiates my network prefab, which is the player. My player prefab itself is this. I have on my player prefab, which is now the multiplayer. Multiplayer has both a network object, this part, okay, and as well as a network transform. We need that part because that allows me to do position, rotation, and scale. No problem. I like that on the network. Let's also show the mesh renderer so that I can see the other person when they come in. I want to see the two, so I don't have to collide. Sometimes we collide with each other and we don't know what's happening, okay? All right, so that is the mesh renderer. It's going to be coming into play now. And I want to go back over here and think about this for a second. So if I disable their stuff, right, then that is really bad. So why don't we just not do this at all? Hear me out. And let's see what happens if inside of my controls, inside of here, if instead of it being a local player or whatever, I don't do this part, local player stuff anymore. Instead, I just do that part, which is get controller, get components, character controller, right? And I move it this way, like it's almost like a local get component inside of here. So this way I don't have to refer to the my controller at all, which means I don't need this piece. I don't need it, right? I'm just going to get it when I need it because now we're in network mode. It's different than if I'm in everything else. The jumping works, all that stuff works. Is grounded. The ground check only works for me right now, but that's something else. Is maybe I'm not grounded, and that's what's happening, right? We don't know what the problem is. So this is where I'm going to have to both host is going to be on the build, and locally I want to see if I'm grounded or not. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I have to maybe I'm getting input, but I'm not getting any movement because of that. Okay. All right, next. So this part here where I got input and I said, okay, well, velocity and all this kind of stuff, let's take this away. So I'm gonna allow this to happen for everybody. So my stuff, same thing with this. I'm not gonna even do that protection anymore. And let's see what the difference is if I took those away, right? So getting inputs, changing my velocity vectors and all that kind of stuff locally. And the only time it's going to be effective is if I'm actually trying to move, which is this part, right? So that is the piece that I want to do. Let's see if I can move on my own first, and then see what happens. So we're going to back up a little bit, okay? Because I think we're going too fast, and I'm also making mistakes, and I don't want that to happen. Host. File, save projects, file, build and run. Host. Right? Excellent. Client. Back to host. Okay. And here's something. Why can't I see the client? Because I should be able to see the client because the client has a mesh right now, right? So I should be able to see them. Am I inside the other guy? Well, if I was, then why? What's going on there, right? That's something that could be happening too. Okay, let's go back and check out what's going on here. So inside of my multiplayer clone, so there's two of them, right, that I got. So I can see both of I got one multiplayer clone that's not grounded, and the other one that's also not grounded. If I'm not grounded, guys, I can't move. So let's click on is grounded and see what happens. If I click on, I can't change this one, but I can change this one. So that means I should be able to move around now. Okay. At least temporarily. Right? There we go. Let's go back to here and then see, did I move everybody? So it's like we have one controller. All right, Edgar, you're always fast, man. I can't keep up with you, man. I swear to God. Edgar's faster than me. He should be teaching the course. Let's see what Edgar did. Okay, so you have the jump. You have the remote jump. You have all this stuff. You have the controller. Let's see what you guys have in here. Okay, you have this. That's good. Okay, random server, random position is good. Wait. And you did that if you're the server, which is, hold on a second.
I'm doing that
Why did you
because
do that?
if the client move it, doesn't matter because the network transform is going to put the position that the server decide.
Okay, so you made a network camera controller. That's what you did there. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I didn't do that yet. You're ahead of me for that one.
But I just destroyed again object with the camera and the script. So in that way, you only have the camera and the script in your local player.
Hold on a second. Let's take a look at your code. So you did a late update. And why the late update instead of a regular update? Just from an order perspective?
Yes.
Is local player.
Oh, that
and-
is for the camera. I found an issue making
Okay, it's fine.
synchronizing the camera.
Server move is grounded. That's what you said. Okay, it's grounded. Okay, so I see what you've done. So you did a server move, and then you did the
I
client
move
move.
everything that check the movement and is grounded to just make it on the server and just synchronize the input from the client.
So
and
the
send it to
client gives
server.
inputs. So you've isolated the client, and on the server is where, and you isolated jump too. And on the server update, you did the server move, which is all of this stuff. Okay, let's take it there. I like that thinking. So I'm going to do mine similar to yours, but not exactly. Okay, so I like we're working together. This is a good thing. I like it. So server update really is going to do this stuff, the move. The client is going to do all the inputs. So let's do what you did. So in the client update, we're going to do all this input stuff, like you said, this part, because we're trying to do everything at once. I'll come back to the is jumping stuff in a second. And I'll put that in here. So this is the client update. And we'll keep it separate just like we did before. So we'll go in there and we'll grab this part here. And we'll grab all that, cut that out. And let's put that in here. All right, so this is the inputs. The inputs are going to work the same as they did before. Move is going to be gone because we're going to do all that moving stuff in this on the server side. So now is jumping, what you did was you saved your is jumping into another, you kind of did the jump there, which you did in the server side. You called that jump, which is down in there. Okay, so why? Sorry, just want to make sure that I've got this straight for you. I'm just trying to kind of bring it over. So is grounded and remote jump input. Oh, I see. You use the remote jump input value.
Exactly.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. Because you're going to use all the remote jump input. Remote jump inputs dot value. And is grounded is going to do this velocity stuff, but it's the same thing. You just put it into a function, right? And I think we did, all I want to do is move right now. I don't care about anything else. So we had that in there. And if I'm not wrong, on the server side, this part right here was in between the jumping and the moving, which means this part, if I'm not wrong, was supposed to be here. And that's what you had, right? Because you had that right there, controller move. I'm getting component. That's all I'm doing there. That's the same. That's the same. And then this move function we're going to do on the server instead. So that's going to be done on server update move. Then we'll clean it up after. So this should be kind of like what you did. Server updates, client
And I
update.
destroyed on the start the object that has camera if it's not blocker player.
On the
Line 40.
position. This one here.
That one.
Now let's look at destroy the combat and so network camera controller object. So you want
In
to,
your case, just camera controller.
yeah, but you're killing the game object that has the,
Yeah, because it has the camera, it has the script. So I just
it
keep
has everything,
everything.
you might as well kill it all. Yeah, it makes sense. So what you're saying is this is the camera controller dot game object. And then this, you said only, you want to do this only if you're the server.
That doesn't matter. I made that before.
I don't think so too. Yeah, I don't think it makes a difference either, but I wasn't able to, I don't think it's working because the respawn, we get the transform position. I don't think this does what it's supposed to do anymore. But because of the, well, maybe it will now because of the character controller. Right, because the character control holds everything together. It won't allow you to move, right? So let's see if this is any different. And let's work locally first. So host, yes, and remote. I don't care about moving the camera. I only care about is moving right now. Then I'll change the camera controller in a second. We'll make this one the host. And we'll make this one the client. I always want to make this one the client. This one's the one that has trouble. Okay. Still can't get moving at all. But here I got everything. It's just that this one doesn't do anything. So what is different with yours and mine? If you're able to make it work. It's like I don't have, it's like I'm not grounded. Like this one here. I think this one is grounded as not. And this one is grounded as not. So if I said this one here, then can't seem to move. Just want to do an inspection here. So main camera is, oh, here's where we've destroyed the main camera. This is where you did that one. we should actually destroy the whole object, right? So what if I
Yes,
did that?
I
with a
destroy
ground
all the object.
object? It looks like I have an extra copy of it, is what I'm seeing here. So there is this, and that is grounded. The main camera is there. Ground check is on, but I can't get any input at all. No input.
Oh, and I know what is in your script.
Yep.
In the update function,
And the which one?
update, the normal from Unity.
The regular update, yeah.
Yeah, and
Oh,
on the line 54, I just checking if it's owner to call client update.
it's not client anymore, just owner only, right?
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Because on the server,
Alright.
how is
Yeah.
occurring at the same time, in
Yeah.
that case is false. I think.
Let's try that again. Okay. Getting closer. So again, we should run it locally to make sure that my stuff is not totally broken. And then we should be able to do that. And then file, build and run. I just want to make it work so I can move. That's all I care about. And then afterwards, we're moving, we can do the camera next. It makes sense. It makes sense what you did, because what you did was you separated the input, which is what we want to send the input to the server, and the server is going to do all the moving parts. It makes sense. All right, so let's do the host. Right, and let's do the client. Let's see if I can actually get through this by this piece. Client. Nope. It's that. It's not killing. Let's kill this thing here. And is it? Maybe it's because it's not grounded somehow. Because last time when I grounded me, I was able to move this part. So I can move this, but yeah, my local guy can't move. My client, no access stuff. And I'm not even getting any input whatsoever. So what did you do differently to make yours work? Sorry, so you did on start is local player, then you did an update, the server update, and the late update you did that's the camera, right? So then the client update, server update, you did a server move, which is all this, which is what I did. Controller move. More vertical value. Oh, okay. Did I do that? I did that because I did that already. Ground check there is ground check. And I changed delta time, controller move, and client move. We just got inputs. So how does yours work? And mine doesn't. What did you do different, Mr. Edgar? Someone to move it. That's all the same. That's just you rotating. This is respawning. I'm wondering if I need to respawn somewhere else too, man, because I think I'm spawning. I can't even see myself. And even though I've turned on my multiplayer mesh renderer, I can't see myself at all. I should be able to see the other player. Two players should be able to see.
That's because of the calling mask of the cameras, actually. I found that out like a second ago.
Because they're too close?
The calling mask of the camera, like in the prefab.
Oh yeah, you can't see each other. You can't see yourself. That's inside the calling mask of the multiplayer.
Yeah,
I'm talking
right.
about inside of the main camera.
Yes.
Inside of the calling mask here. And you're not able to see yourself, which is weird. But you wouldn't be able to see yourself anyway. But the reason why we did that is because then you wouldn't be able to see through yourself, but that's doesn't matter. Save. Let's just, I just want to be able to build and run and see. I want to be able to see the other player where if they're separate from me. So I don't want them to like launch inside of each other. That can happen. And maybe that's what's happening with mine too. That's different than Eggers. Host. Okay. Client. Just being mindful of the time here to get this done. And where is the client? Look, oh, there he is. See, I was inside of the other guy. So there's the other guy. And now he can see me. So I'm in front of his camera. So his camera is somewhere here. Okay. And then if I go here, whoa, something happened there. Delta camera, it says variable delta message received for non-existent behavior. Network behavior no one, network behavior code, log warning. Behavior object ID 1. And I still got this extra code here. It's almost like I want to destroy or delete that dude. So that's really me. That's not you. And I should have both guys in there. So that's you and that's me. But I've lost my own control. Right, that's what's happened. You've disabled my control when you killed my object somehow. Right, so when you did, go back again. So this is the same. Rand radius, network variables exactly the same. Speed. You kept that in there, but we don't need it. Wake, what did you do different, Edgar? Is random spawn position. I mean, we spawned into
doesn't
each other.
matter. Should be not doesn't matter.
No, but I spawned into you. I spawned, that's the only thing that's different. If is server, then I spawned.
Can you go to your server update just to check something?
Yep.
Server
My
update?
server, which one?
Server
update?
update. Yes.
The server update, all it does is do, it does this, just move.
Okay. And move is upper.
And move is all this, which you have, right? This is the exact same thing you have, correct? Input values. And the only thing you did was you have a controller. I didn't get a controller. I'm getting the controller.
And the character control is not disabled in local in your side or something like that. No.
Did you disable it?
No, but I remember you write it before.
No, I didn't do that.
Ah, okay.
Let's refactor this one. Refactor rename. We'll call this character spawn character position. We don't care about color anymore. And we're going to say if is server. We'll do that part, no problem. And I'll put that in there. So now we're closer to you, to what you have. But destroy get components and children camera controller game object, that didn't do it. Because that destroys the camera, right? That's what you want
the
to try and do.
camera and the script, so you're unable to see your own camera and control your own camera.
Yeah, if you're not the local player, right? But the thing is, I think it's destroying.
Crane move is on.
Is what?
No, just reading in loud.
It's exactly the same as yours. I'm just curious what you did differently. Run a position, client update. We did update inputs, so that's it. And the update input does this, like we did, the exact same thing as you. Huh. Did you change anything on the in the network part, this part at all? Like on the in the prefab?
On the network transform, I just have synchronized positions. I don't know, it doesn't that matter.
Oh, you just took off the rotation and the scale because they're not rotating? The scale, we don't care about
at the
scale
beginning, I
anymore.
just disabled the scale,
Yeah,
but
we don't
later
care.
with the camera, I have uses with the rotation. So I disabled rotation too.
Well, because you're not rotating here, you're rotating with the camera, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, that makes sense because the camera itself, the camera would move, right? That's the other thing. So on the camera side, when we get there, and for this network transform, we don't care about scale, right? And we don't care about moving, but we do care about rotating. You did that, right?
There, I just removed the network transform of the camera.
From the camera altogether?
Yeah, but because it's only matter in your local for your
Okay.
camera.
Maybe that's what it is. Like I'm saying, we have to compare like to like, or otherwise it doesn't matter, right? So first, let's see if it works. Yes. And close. I'm sure the other people are getting close too. Golden Run, Doyun, are you closer?
Getting there.
No, it's a little frustrating because you have to figure out which one to turn on, which one to turn off. But really, at the end of the day, once we get this done, next week it'll be lots of fun. Host and client. Well, that's much better. Whoa. Okay, that was it. I think that was it. But what happened there? It was almost like was I colliding? What was I doing? Oh, whoa, that's interesting. My camera, my controls are reversed. Did you get that?
No, I think.
Yeah, my controls are reversed for my second player. Look. So if I move here, I mean, first of all, I spawned inside the other one. Spawned in the other one. Well, the camera control, I didn't do the camera control yet anyway, but I spawned inside that player again, look. Which is weird. Like I'm spawning.
That is going to be an issue of the rotation of the camera. Because on the server, but you're the server. Doesn't matter.
Well, no, so look here. So if I run, I'm running locally, right? So here's my client, right? So on the client, look how I'm inside the other guy. I see how I'm seeing the other guy?
Yeah.
Back up and I can move around now, but I'm moving in and it's reversed.
Because
the camera control.
You have another rotation from the server, so your forward and your right is different from the server.
Yes, and that's
so
what
after you fix the camera, is going.
We're gonna have it right, but I'm just curious on why I'm spawning again still inside that stupid thing. That's really weird. So let's take a look at what's happening here. So this guy, still lots of control. I can still jump up and down. All that stuff is good. And this guy lost his server. Let's do it the other way around. Let's run the server locally just for a second. I want to see if there's any other kind of, oops. Let's run the client, the host locally, I mean. Okay, there's my host local. And then now let's go down here and run a client. I'll run a couple clients and see what the difference is. Clients. Okay, so here, yeah, I'm inside, I spawned inside there again. And yep. All right, so at least we got that part. One more time. Just want to check one more thing. Client. Right? So I can jump on the client too, right? That's pretty cool. All right, excellent. So that I know that that's all working. So your inputs are working. Now on the network camera, we have to make that different. So let's go back to here. We'll kill this part off. And we don't have a script for that yet, but we'll make one. So we'll make a brand new script. Great. New C# script. We'll call network camera controller. Network camera controller. And then we'll attach it to our network, our camera right now. But we want to copy some of the stuff that we have inside the camera controller first. Let's just double click on this and double click on the camera controller. And we want to basically do all of this, right? I want to do all this for a second. Let's grab all this first. And then we'll talk about how to modify UN network behavior, right?
Yes, I just did the same thing. Just copy all, make network behavior.
Behavior, and you do the same thing for the inputs and the variables, right?
Yeah. Well,
You have to.
no, the only change I made is how the camera doesn't exist in the other clients. This doesn't matter synchronize anything. The only thing that matter for synchronize is the rotation of the body on Y. So I make
Okay, wait. Let me just attach it first, because otherwise we're gonna have issues.
Oh yeah.
So inside of the network player behavior, sorry, I meant to go into the prefabs, into the network player, and then in the network player, what we want to do is we want to go into the camera. What is multiplayer? I'll be okay. We want to go into the camera, and and I need to get, now it has the camera that right now has a joystick, which we want to get rid of, and the player body we do need, right? And the sensitivity is 10. So let's go and get rid of that stuff, the joystick. So that's in the network camera controller. So joystick we're not going to use right now. We're going to fix on one thing. The player body we're going to need. So let's, what I'll do is I'll attach that camera right now. Of the script, network camera controller. There we go. And then we'll just assign that value as 10. We'll pull the multiplayer transform player body in there. Multiplayer. There we go. And then we'll get rid of this one. Remove components. Does it have a joystick? Thought I got rid of it. Behavior, network camera controller, no joystick, save. Why is the joystick still there? Is there an error somewhere? Oh, there are. Okay, so we don't need this because we don't need any kind of joysticks right now. We don't care about testing for the platform right now because we're just worried about just getting horizontal inputs. So you're not passing inputs even? You're not even
I tried, but was you can feel the lag very too much. So
yeah, because of the you're trying to put it across the network, right?
right, yeah. So what it make is I leave all the code in that way and just add at the end. That's need to tell to the. Oh no, I change it to the. You would go to my code. I share. Yeah.
Talking about
That-
down here.
The only things I did was make a new function, that one, that synchronize the rotation just.
Oh, and you
of-
did that on the, and
I,
Doyun did it differently too.
yeah, and I
you
did
did
in the
this
late
on,
update
right?
because I
so in the-
tried to synchronize by input, but the lag feel very weird.
Oh, it's first of all, lag is terrible as it is, right? So
Yes.
let's
So
grab this.
what I did was like every time you can just synchronize
So hold on a second.
the-
Yeah, you're right.
the rotation.
So network player behavior, what you did is on late update, which is right here. You put in the update rotation on the RPC, which was a update rotation RPC call. That's your synchronize right there. Let's put that in here just so we can see it. And that came right from you. Quaternion Euler of whatever the new rotation is, passing in the rotation from the transform Euler angles. If it's local player, pass in the transform Euler angles on the y-axis only, because we don't care about anything else. And you want to pass it and update it to the transform rotation. That's a communication from the client to the server. That's what you're doing there. Server's on this side, the client's on this side. This is the message you're sending across. Okay, cool. And that's what fixed it?
Yes.
Second here.
I think it's going to have issues with if you have 3 or 4 players, you cannot
Let's see.
see the rotation of the other players.
Let's see.
for the moment.
Controller sensitivity, X rotation. So you didn't change anything here? You just called it network behavior and that's it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, that I don't know how that works for you, but that's fine. Yeah, let's see
The
if it
only
works.
important thing is that the network transform should have disabled synchronized rotation on Y.
On the camera. Oh, sorry, on
No,
the, sorry.
on the prior.
On the player. On the player, you're saying the network transform should have enabled rotation
No,
on the Y.
disable.
Disabled on everything.
Yes, because if not, the client is not able to control the rotation.
That makes sense. All right, so save locally. Let's see if this works. Saved, post. Host looks okay. I always check the host because sometimes we'll get really weird errors. Okay, so that's the only thing you did. So you really didn't do anything except for mark it as network behavior, which actually connects it to Unity netcode, which is what you need to do anyway, right? Because otherwise it won't work. So we get rid of this. And get rid of this because it's pretty much the same right now. And then I'll go to Doyuan's fix. Let's see what Doyuan's got. He's got another way of doing it. All right, and let's see how we're doing here. So we'll go to file, save project, build and run. And we're very close to where we want to be time-wise. It's not exactly how I did it last time, but it doesn't matter. And things have changed. Last year, we were using MLAPI. This year, we're not using MLAPI. We're using netcode. Netcode is different. So host, able to move around. I moved out of the location just to make sure that that's the truth. And then let's run this one. And do I spawn on the host or not? Clients. Oh, right. Sorry. I am looking for, on the network behavior, I'm looking for a camera controller and it's no longer there. Network camera controller. So I was looking at the regular camera controller before, and of course that doesn't exist. So, it's good. I mean, I'm happy with it, but I'm going to go to your point. Try it with 3 instances, Edgar, while we're waiting. And then we'll go to Doyuan's, solution. Clients. Not bad. It's not a lot of lag. The jumping looks a little weird. Response-wise is pretty good. All right, and let's try multiple instances now. So let's go back to this. Let's try one of these. Another one. Or and let's see how this plays out. So this was the host on the right. This one's the client in the middle. So another client on the other side. And here I'm moving around. I can see one, but the other one's probably inside. Let's move to this one. Yep, inside of each other. Looks okay, Edgar. And performance is good. Honestly. The only thing I have a problem with is the respawning bit. So yeah, I mean, performance good. Okay, let's see what Doyun did. Doyun did something totally different. He says you also, but you have a camera controller merged in the network player behavior. Okay. So let's see yours. So you did remote vertical input, horizontal jump and rotation input. Okay, that's new. Oh, that's weird that you did that way. So you got temporary enabled, you disabled the camera temporarily. You got the camera controller in there, enables false for your local player. Your local player or you're the is server, but not if you're the client. Okay, got it. No problem. Update. And then you got that way, you got vertical input. Okay, so I see what you did. So you got access to the camera and you merged both scripts into one, is what you're saying, in order for you to make this work.
Yes. Yes.
And the only thing you did differently, so this is different what you did when you did Edgar. What he did was he sent also the rotation input value to the as a network, and you get good performance. How's your performance?
No, so like how should I put this? So like the camera rotation on the x-axis, that's not synced, so that's local, so that's fast, but the player body rotation on the y-axis is, you know, like it goes to server and server handles the movement, so it's slow.
So that's not good. Okay, let's do one more thing. Okay, for everybody, this is for everybody by now. All right, so thank you for that. Interesting. Let's go and modify our prefab. So I'm going to bring the prefab into the scene for a second, okay, just to try this out here. So in my, I'm bringing that multiplayer back in, and let's go into what the multiplayer is going to see. So in the player camera, right? What I want to do is I want to put in like a gun, okay? So what the gun is going to be in the camera's eye, right? Which is going to be right in here. So it's going to look like I'm going to put in, it's almost like going to be a cylinder that's inside the camera's eye, right? So let's add another cylinder to the camera is what I'm saying, right? So I'm going to go into create 3D object cylinder. And what we're going to do is we're going to rotate it. So this way, like a big bazooka. And we're going to move it out a little bit because it's in the camera's eye. That's not what I wanted to do. I meant to the, did I rotate the camera? No, I rotated the cylinder, right? Yeah, okay, good. So this is 90 degrees. And we'll make it so that it's 0.1 and 0.1 and 0 point nothing. This will be more like what it was, 1. And this will be 0.1. So something that looks like that. We'll take the cylinder and move it out this way. And let's see what the camera, can the camera see? It can. And so we'll move it down to the, oops, undo. We'll move the cylinder down. It's rotated though. All right, so the cylinder's there, and we'll chop the camera's length in half. It's almost like 0.5. I want to make it so it's not as wide. So let's chop it this way. That way for a second. No, undo. The cylinder. We have a kind of a direction that we can see. That's why I'm making this. And then in the camera, we'll put in a little local canvas in the camera. So for the player's cam, right? We'll have a screen space overlay in the camera in the local canvas. That's gonna be interesting too. We'll see how that goes. Actually, I won't do that right now. Let's just add that in there, and let's just change the default material to like a concrete or silver, which we can probably do. So go to materials, and we have a death plane. I don't think I have anything that makes sense. But we do have the gold material, don't we? Sure, let's make that a gold material. Gold gun, a man with golden gun, all right? And then let's take a look there. There's got a gold gun. It looks like some kind of thing. We can make it the cylinder. Maybe the cylinder needs to be a little bit bigger. Camera should be a 1. Let's do the cylinder. That's cylinder itself should be less big. Six. How does that look on the camera? Too long. 0.5. And that should be pulled back now. Camera. Pretty good. Okay. All right. And we're going to do is we're going to reduce this, the near clipping plane down to 0.1. All right. So that doesn't clip anymore. And there's other things we can do here, but not yet. And what I want to do is let's update the prefab. So on the multiplayer dude, let us override apply all, and we will get rid of this dude. Goodbye. And then now let's run it locally. So we should have an idea of what that looks like. If I go host, right? So something like that, where we have a direction. All right, good. And then what we want to do is want to build and run, so all of them have that. I'm just curious because what you said, Doyu, and that's why I'm doing that. Because if I'm looking in the wrong direction when I'm moving, I shouldn't be, because it looks pretty good, but post. Excellent. Now let's just do the same thing with 2 more. 2. Right. There. I can't see the gun.
Is destroyed with the camera and the gun update.
Ah. That's not good.
So I'm changing that. Don't destroy it, just disable the script and the camera.
Yeah, I was thinking that's probably the best thing to do. But anyways, okay, let's get out of that then. Because we destroy the camera, and we don't want to destroy the camera, we want to disable. That's not a big issue. So we'll just disable. So we'll say get component in children, and then game objects. We want to disable the camera, right? Set active to false. That's what you're doing, right?
But the component camera, because if you disable the game object, it's going to disable the weapon too. Because it's a shy from the camera.
Yes. Because you're disabled, you're turning it off otherwise.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
And
Okay,
the
so that's what's
and the
happening.
camera component too.
You have to disable that too, yes. Because if you don't do that, then the camera is gonna be active, and then there'll be two cameras in the scene at the same time. Network camera and controller, and the actual game object you want to keep disabled. Are you disabling it, or because the camera? This is the actual network camera controller, the camera controller itself. Are you disabling the camera too?
Yes.
That's the camera itself. So camera, and then enable zip to false. Okay, that's fine. Well, yeah, but you would have to. You would have to, but you're not destroying it, because if you destroy it, you remove the whole object, which is not what we want. All right, so file, build and run. Almost there. Getting there. I'll make this the host. Good. Oh, we got a shadow. The shadow. Sorry, that I always laugh when we remember I remember these things, and then I'm like, wait, that should be removed. Client. Good. Looks like I have an arm now. Okay, cool. And let's do one more. Client. Okay. See it, we can see all the guys with guns, and they point in the same direction. Yeah, this for now. Okay, he is. And that's good. And I can go into him, right? I can push him around. That's good. Push this guy too. Excellent. All right, so that's pretty good. Still issues exist, for sure, but we're closer to where we want to go. Okay, now next, let's save this and put it up on GitHub, because this is like first working version of the stuff. We have lots of work to do still. For this one, I'm just going to put this up on GitHub. Few changes, stage all changes. We'll say first working version of network player. Changes, and we'll push that up. Okay, next, let's bring back the just the canvas. Let's see if we can see the canvas. The canvas can have some stuff disabled. We can disable the mini map and all that stuff right now. Okay, we don't need to have that. Just the canvas. So can I see, you know, the canvas element? And does everyone have the same canvas element, or do they have? How's that going to work? Okay, so let's go there and see that. So let's launch it. The mini map is an extra camera. So that's something that where I have a camera, you have a camera, and it's like we want to feed into the same camera. That is no problem. Mini map camera, for you to see the mini map camera, it's the same mini map, right? The problem is that the mini map moves with the character, right? So that means I have a camera that's for me, an extra camera for me, and you have an extra camera for you, right? And everyone has an extra camera for themselves. How does that mini map now too? That's also got to be duplicated. And sometimes, if you think about it, because the mini map, the way we've done it is, it's another network object, isn't it? And we want to spawn a mini map, you know, because remember, we can spawn as many network objects as we want, right, in our scene. And that's something that we have to do differently. So let's get back in here. All right, so in the canvas, so in the old area where I have old, I have my canvas object, and if I enable it for a second, then I have the player health bar, right? And the player health bar has a health bar object with a health system and a health label and all those things, and on-screen controls, which we are going to disable right now. On-screen controls are going to be off for now. That's another problem to solve at another time. The mini-map border and all that stuff, it's going to remain off. The mini-map camera is going to remain off. I just want to be able to see the event system should be on. Just turn that event system on. Death plane, we should probably turn on, but we don't have a spawn point yet to respawn. Health system is the health bar. That is nothing that can't be turned on. And the game controller, it has a start tile and a goal tile and generates the tiles. That should be off. Game save manager should be off at this point, right? But I should be able to see my own health bar, right, at this point, if the health bar can be seen at all, right? And if I run it locally, then when I go host, then I see the health bar on the top left one. Okay. Oh yeah, let's also disable just on the player prefab, guys, on the player prefab. So that's the network player. Go in there to the, sorry, the multiplayer. Go in there and inside the cylinder, which is your gun, what you really want is the gun to have its own camera. And the gun's camera is going to render inside of the other camera, right? So what's going to happen is right now we have the main camera, and the main camera, you know, as an example, it's going to be compartmentalized, right? Because what's happening is the gun can actually go inside or bump into, it can go inside of an object, because right now the gun has a capsule collider, right? And that's expensive to have an extra capsule collider on top of the gun. I mean, it's really up to you how you want to do it, but it's pretty crazy if you did that. For now, and also that's the other thing is the capsule collider, it's going to be scaled because of the thing that we're using, which is okay. But I'm just saying it's things to consider removing. Main camera's there, and we have the gun, and we want to turn off the shadows. That's where I was going. So under lighting, we want to say off, and receive shadows is also off. Right now, maybe because we've turned on the body for now, we want to go to the main body and turn the shadows on, so that we send shadows, but we don't receive anything, because it doesn't make any sense, right? So that way, if I press play, we should be able to see each other, right? So there we go. There's that thing with no errors. And I'm just curious as to how that's going to run, because we have a single UI, and in the UI itself, we're going to have a canvas, right? And if I was to run this again, build and run. Host. Okay, good. This guy as a client. Okay. So what I want to do is if I collide, I can fight him. I can fight him with my gun will fight him like he's got his gun. And that's really weird too. It looks like I'm floating, but at least it gives me a sense of depth, which is a problem with when you're playing in multiplayer. Again, what we're going to do eventually is replace our, this is next week, if we have time. I want to replace the body that we have with actual animated body, right? Which is going to be cool. So when we move around, we'll see us moving around, as opposed to, you know, what we see here, right? Which is kind of weird. And when we press the left mouse button or something like that, then we'll activate some kind of attack, which is kind of a neat thing to have, right? Which is kind of the beginning of multiplayer, because this is very basic, right? That's what we're doing here. And I'm just curious, so that's good. Thank you. And what I want to do is I want to put back the camera, so the regular camera. So let's go and add in a camera. There's the camera, and the camera that we had taken out before should be something like where it kind of looks down at the scene, like so. Maybe -8. -6 was pretty good. -6 and 3. Yeah, -6 and 3 and 0. I would say for the position 0, 0, 0. Maybe a little bit back, a little bit more. I would say a little bit up more. This should be 0, and this should be 4. And that would be like something like -8. I think is probably a good thing to see. Okay, so I'm just moving, I'm putting the camera back in. And what I want to do is with this camera, when I come into the, like in the canvas right now, here's the thing that I would do. In the canvas, I want to have the canvas turned off. And when I come in, when I press either host, either one of the two buttons, host, and honestly, we don't need the server because we're not going to do the server. So it's only going to be a client or a host. So let's fix that problem now in the network manager. So on the scripts, we have a game manager. And the game manager, we have this on GUI stuff where I have start buttons and all this kind of stuff and start labels. What I want to do is I want to get rid of, let's just comment out the server. We don't need the server part. So we can't select a server. We can only select a host or a client. That's number one. And we don't really care about transport. I don't care about that. We do want to identify whether we're client or not for us for now, because it's nice for debugging, but we don't care about the transport. That's never been a thing. So, but inside of here, what we also want to do in the game manager is when I press one of the buttons, doesn't matter which one, then if any button gets pressed at all, then it disables the camera and enables the canvas. So let's put a reference to the canvas here. So we'll say public, and we'll say game object canvas, right? That's in the game manager, which is something that's global. That's this part. And we'll just get reference to that canvas. And right now what happened is the canvas will start off as disabled, right? So it's not going to be removed, just disabled. And then what we're going to say is when the game manager is triggered, it's going to enable the canvas, but it's going to disable the camera. So the camera is the other thing it needs. So camera, call this the local camera, public game objects, local camera. And that'll be this camera that we're using right here. Call it local camera. Just for that, we have that. And local camera will connect to the game manager. There we go, local camera, canvas. And we'll say that when we press any of the start buttons, which is up here, we'll say that the canvas set active is true. And we'll say that the local camera set active is false. And that's if it's single, and we can also check to see if how many clients there are, how many, and then when there's only one, then we want to do, or if everyone disconnects, let's say, or if the host, especially if the host disconnects, and we want to turn the camera back on, and we want to set the canvas back off. So we want to be able to do. So let's first get into this and see how that works. All right. Want the camera to be on. Want the camera to be on. Why is there no cameras rendering? No cameras display rendering, no cameras displaying. Interesting. Oh, local camera is off. Sorry. Local camera is off if I press the buttons. If I press the buttons, let's make another function. Public. And we'll make it so that it is we'll call it something like, so we want to turn the camera on and turn cameras off, right? So, or sorry, turn off camera. This. And turn off the camera by putting it into the start buttons. Every time I select one of the buttons, whether it's host or client, we'll say turn off camera. I can't do that because it's got to be static, public static void. And that means that we can't get access to this stuff because the buttons are public static void. Do I need to make the public static void? I don't know if I do. Start button. I don't think I need to do that. That's almost there, guys. And I'll let you go after this. And turn off the camera here. And then we'll go from there. So file, save project, and then we'll do a build and run. Did I? Post. That's the client. Turn off camera is good. Net manager singleton. No, I'm good. That's okay. Works. All right, so what we want to do is we want to detect if at any time that we lose connection. And that's the last thing we want to do. So if our network manager singleton is client, this is in the game manager, right? So we want to be able to turn off, turn the camera back on. So let's make another void. Turn on camera. Client's disconnected. The only time that happens is if the host is disconnected. So we want this to be back on again. And the other way around, this is false and this is true. And we want to do that if and only if the client is disconnected. So network manager singleton, that can be in an updates function. Network Manager dot singleton dot shutdown in progress. Not start host. Connected clients. Connected client lists. Sometime disconnect clients. Shut down. There's no host. Disconnected clients. That's a reference. I want a number. My connected clients is connected host name. On client connected callback. Yeah, I have to look it up, guys. I'm so sorry. I don't know what it is now. So Unity netcode, host, disconnected. With that. Disconnects. See, even they don't know how to do it. Is host, is client, network manager, stop host, stop client, stop server. That's if that happens. Void disconnects. Network manager singleton shutdown. Yeah, I don't want that. I want to make sure that if the client, if the host disconnects, then it gets you back and it just disables stuff again. If there's no host. I honestly, guys, I this is so new, I don't know. So it's not important anyways. It's just a thought I had. But at least this way, look, what we have is the ability for us to turn on and turn off the camera when you're coming in and when you start off. I think that's acceptable for today. On client disconnect callback. Okay, we'll try it and then that's it, because we're going to time out soon. So void on client disconnects. No, thank you. You found it. That's good. Connected. On client disconnected. It's not the it's not the client, it's the host. Right? When the host is shut down, you get kicked out. And if there's no host, right, then local client, local time, prefab handler, connected host name. Like if you're not connected to the network, if you're not connected to the host, right, that's what we want to do. When the host is shut down, we want to shut you down. We want to turn you off, right? We don't want you to wait there, right? Because let's see what happens anyways. I don't think it's this. This is if the client disconnects. It's not the client, it's you're the host. But then again, you're also the host client. But still, let's just try it. So what happens when I'm running? This is it, guys. I'm not doing any more after this. File, save, and then file, build and run. And host. And run. Yeah. Good. And then in the host itself, host disconnects. And the client says no cameras rendering. See? When the host disconnects, you should be disconnected. And I can't remember how to do that from the new system. Sorry. No more when there's no more host. All right, that's good enough. So for the lab, I'm not going to tax you much more on this. For the lab, so we enabled our player prefabs work with Unity netcode. We modified the network player, changed controls after we test the network player, port the change over to original player, build the sample map. I don't think we're going to have time for this. So I'm going to have to say no to this. No sample map, but just run it in 3 instances. That's good enough. And I think this is good enough for now. I mean, we have things working, and I think this week took enough time to figure out. All right, any questions before we go for the day? And if you have other things you want to add before we go. How about Tatiana? You're pretty quiet. Did you get everything working? No? Okay, let me push my changes up to GitHub then.
Yeah, I somewhat behind in scripting, so I can't code so fast as you.
No,
So-
you're faster. You guys are young and faster than me. What do you mean? Right? Look at Edgar, how fast he is. All right.
Yeah,
So
it's amazing.
he's
Edgar is amazing.
all right, so let's push it up. So we'll say so second working version, we'll say we add the gun of network player. Next week we'll do a animator transform. Okay, and that should be it for today. Edgar, you good? Doyun? Yep. Anybody? You guys are okay? All good to go? Good. All right, anything to add before we go, guys? Again, Edgar and Doyun, thank you very much for all your help. That was great. I really appreciate it. And I think we're able to make it easier for everybody. I think there's still some optimizations for sure, from here on in, and that's something that we can do the next time. Okay. Thank you so much. And then we'll see you guys next week. Good luck. I'll stop recording on YouTube.